Well, if you can open up a browser of yours, and I presume you have the internet connection. So if you go to Google, you can go to Google website. That might be the best way to find it. Type Java 8, version 8, API, and say math. Okay, Java 8, version 8, API, math. If you do that, you should see, hopefully the first hit should be math, Java Platform SE8, okay? If you go there, you would say class math. If you see that it's java.lang, lang stands for language, so it's like a library there for you to use. Okay, today we're going to focus on how you can actually read an API page for a class, and later on in the course, when you get more to more advanced level, you're going to use other classes in Java, but they will be presented in a similar fashion. So this will be a first exercise. Okay, so now first of all, you can see the name of the class, which is called math. And typically, after this, you actually see sort of like a summary paragraph, a few paragraphs summarizing what a class is supposed to do. Okay, so I'm not going to read it to you. So later on, when you want to use it, you have to read it. But let's not worry about this just for now. And then there are going to be a few sections on the web page for you to go over. So you will see some summary section and also some detail section, summary versus detail. Of course, detail will give you more details, more information. So now for the summary, they're going to give you two sections for the summary. One is called the field summary. So here, for the field, just think of that as a variable. So somehow in the math class, they have some variables or constants for you to use. I'm going to show you exactly how to use it. And now when you read it, you can see now for the math class, we got exactly only two fields here. So one is called, the name is called E. The other one is called pi. So maybe you're more familiar with the pi. Remember before, we actually did the radius example. We simply say double pi, final double pi equals 3.14, etc. But they have a more precise value in the math class, which you can use directly. You don't have to do the value yourself. I'm going to show you in the Eclipse. Okay, so you can see that, first of all, you can see that we have modifier and type colon here. Okay, you will see static and double. You don't have to worry too much about what static really means. We'll talk about it in much greater detail after the holiday. So now static, the only way you can think of that, I also mentioned on Friday's lecture, is in order for you to use the E and pi, you have to mention the name of the class, which is called math. That's what static means. And here the double simply means the type of the variable, which means in this case, E and pi are both double. Okay? If you use the value, you have to use that as a double. So here they have some short description about what pi really means, and that should be quite expected. And now let's say for either one of these two fields, you can actually get more detail about the field. If you want to do that, simply click on, there's a hyperlink over here. If you click on the pi, it's going to bring you to where the detail for pi is. So here it simply tells you that pi is actually double value that's closer to, okay, you can read the description. That tells you this is what pi is. Okay, so that's about the field, which is like a variable section. You have summary, you have details. Similarly, there are other things you can do, which is more even more useful. If you scroll up on the page, and then you will see there's a section called, let me just go back to the very beginning. Something called method summary. So method is a very common word in Java. So I'm also going to talk about methods later on in the course, also after the holiday. But for method, you can think of that as a function for you to use, like what you learned in the math class back in high school. So for example, let's say, so we have a list of methods here. You can see we have many methods here in the collection. So for example, let's focus on one and see what that really is trying to say. Again, you have the modifier and the type. You have the name of the method. So here we have static, as I said. In order to use the method, you only have to give the math class. And then the method here is actually going to return something of type double. Okay? And then, so here the name of the method is called ABS, standing for absolute value. So remember in your math class, if you somehow want to calculate the absolute value for some value, you just return the positive value version of that, right? That's sort of what the absolute value would do. So this is to say, if you actually supply any double value to this function here, it's going to return to you another double. That is the absolute value for that. Okay, I'm going to show you how to use that. So here, this actually defines that how you can use it, and this tells you how many values you have to supply to the function. For absolute value, just one function, just one parameter. I can give you another example here. So there is another function here called POW. Okay. So POW here stands for power, which means, let's say if you want to calculate 2 to the power of 3, which will give you the value 8, right? So now you can see that somehow we actually need to supply two numbers here to the power function. So for example, you would say 2 to the power of 3. That's how you use it. I'm going to show you as well in the Eclipse. Okay, and then this is going to return a double value as well. You can say 2.3 to the power of 4. You can do whatever number combination you like. Okay, as before, so now if I would like to get the detail about the power function, I can just double click on the link, and it's going to give to me all the details about this method here. So that's whenever you're actually going to use a library class or library function, this is where you find all the information there. So Java contains hundreds of such classes for you to use. That's why Java is actually so common. There are many things you can use. You don't have to develop the classes yourself. Okay, that's a very brief introduction to the math class. I will give you have time to browse over the page yourself. So now, let me just bring your attention to two very useful functions here. We saw absolute value, and we also see power, POW, and there's another one, SQRT. Let me just go back. SQRT stands for square root. SQRT. Okay, so now in the method summary here, we see SQRT. So it's going to return the correct value for some square root of some value. For example, if you say square root of 4, that should return back to you 2. Square root of 1.44 should give you 1.2, something like that. So that's square root, power, and absolute values. So these are the methods we have seen so far. There are many, many others. You can try to find out yourself. Okay, let's try something out in the Eclipse, and then you'll be set to do the exercise for today. It's more like a combination of math and some loop structure, which you have been familiarized yourself with so far. Okay, launch Eclipse, and we'll create a new project. Or you can just do in the same project, doesn't matter. Okay, in my case, I'm going to have, okay, launch Eclipse, and then if you go to your package explorer there, you will see that, for example, I got CSE114 week 4 lab 2. You can create a project like that, but you don't have to be like me, doesn't matter. And under that project there, you can simply just create a new class. So a new class, we can say, how about just use math functions, just to illustrate how you can use the math functions. Okay, use math functions there. And I also want the main method there to be included. Okay, so now say finish. Okay, so now let's try to see how we can play with the math. How about just something very simple? What about we want to know what's the value of pi? How do we do that? So first of all, we can say system dot. Let's say what we used to do before. What we used to do was we can say double final pi is equal to 3 point something like that, right? Final double. Sorry, that's the wrong syntax. Final double. That's what we used to do before. So now, and then we can also try to print out system.out.println, and you can print out pi. That's what we used to do before, right? But now, actually, in math class, they do have a field or a variable called pi, as we saw before. The way to do that, the way to retrieve the value for that, is simply say, we can say double, you can say pi from math, for example, just to distinguish. Equals, so now remember the static keyword we saw before. That means if you want to use the pi, you just have to say math, like that, and say dot. If you click a dot there, Eclipse shows you all the possible methods you can call from the math class, right? just search for pi. Oh, actually, that's the second one, right? They give you the fields first and then the methods. Just choose pi. If you do that, it's going to give that to you. It's a double type, right? Okay, so now you can actually do another print line here. You'll see that, for example, we can say pi value from math. And you would say pi from math. Okay, so we can actually compare. You actually see that the pi value in the math class has much more precision. So far so good? So the only syntax you're learning is whenever you're trying to get anything from the math class, because they are static, all of them are static. So you should say the class name math dot whatever name it is you're trying to use. We'll see many more examples in the demo. Okay, let's run it and see what happened. Okay, you see this is the constant value that we define using a double literal. And this is the value that we got from the math class. You can see that got much more precision, right? So you can always use the pi from there. So one exercise you can do at home is, how would you use the pi value? We can do it together. How about we do it together? So it's a simple one. How about, let's say the exercise we would like to do is to use, let's get rid of that. You can put this into comments. Okay, so let's not worry about that. Just put // put that into comments. Let's say we have the pi value here, and we would like to actually get the, let's say, the area of some circle. Let's say double radius is equal to, let's say, 26.78, for example, any value you like. So now, how do we actually use the pi value from the math class in order to calculate the area of the circle? Let's see if you can write that line yourself before I write it on the screen. So you're somehow going to say radius times the pi, right? How would you do that? But now the pi should come from the math class.
Double area.
Something like that. Well, I can help you a little bit. You can say double area equals what?
Pi from math times.
So here you should say somehow, you would say radius times the value from the math class. But how would you specify that? We already learned that, right? Okay, so that's your very first example. Okay, so now you would say radius times what? So here, somehow you want to get a value of pi from the math. So the way to use it is to mention the class name and say dot. Always remember the dot. And here we're going to use the pi value here. That's one way to do it. Okay. And now we're going to say, you can also say system.out.println. So you can say area of circle is area. Okay, if you do that, it's going to calculate the value for the area for the circle. If you run it, you're going to get something like that. Of course, that's actually with much precision. Okay, let me do one more thing for you. If you go back to the API page for the math, remember over there in the method list there was a method called Poww, and it is actually going to calculate some number to the power of some number. Let's say if I want to calculate 3 to the power of 2, then I will pass 3 as the first argument and 2 as the second argument, right, to the function. Okay, so now I would like to now rewrite this part using the math function. So here radius times radius is really radius to the power of 2. Agree? So now I would like to say, I would like to use the power function from the math class rather than using the multiply operator from Java. Okay, how do you do that? So I'll help you with that. So now I would like to say math dot. Okay, now you would want to use the POW here. So power, and then you would say type that. So now Eclipse is expecting you to specify two values there for the first number and the second number, right? So now the first number should be radius to the power of 2. So 2 should be the second number. So you would say radius to the power of 2. So here, what you really should notice is the syntax. So you can see that when we are trying to use this, so math is a class name. You have a dot, and also you have the function name, POW standing for power. And now the power takes two things, takes two values. You would take radius to the power of 2. Of course, if I want to do, let's say, radius to the power of 3, you would say radius 3. Right? So far, so good? Okay. Very good. Okay, so now that's how we do it. Let's do another interesting exercise here. Let's do one more, and then actually, let's see. How do you calculate square root? Let's say. Let's say, let's say if I would like to calculate the square root of some number, what about just 25? You know, to make it very trivial. Okay. So now if you look at the square root method in there, so if you type sqrt, okay. If you search for that, you will see that in the method summary there, okay, you can see that it takes one double variable there. Okay, you can see first of all sqrt is a function name, and that function requires one input value here of type double, and then the result is going to be double as well. For example, if I give you 4.0, it's going to return back to me 2.0. Both of them are double. Okay, so now how do you say in Eclipse to actually figure out what's the square root of 4.0? How do you do that? It will be done in a similar way. So if you go back to Eclipse, so you can say system.out.println. So here you would say square root of 4.0 is, okay, so now we should have that expression there. So you can say math dot, and we want sqrt, right? If you type that, it's not expecting a value. So here we can say 4.0. Follow? Okay, so we are trying to print out the value for the square root. This is one way to do it. Let's say if you don't like to put the expression, it's kind of long. If you don't want to put the expression in the print statement, what you could have done was to say, you can declare a variable here, say double, so you can say sqrt of 4.0, or 4, let's say, is equal to, and you can cut and paste that expression there, and use that value instead, sqrt of 4. That will also work. So both are equivalents. Okay, any questions so far? No? Okay, let's just run the program and see what happened. Okay, the square root of 4.0 is 2.0. That's kind of trivial, but I kind of illustrate to you how to use the math. Okay, so let me just summarize what you have learned so far, and you will need that for the exercise. Yeah.
Cube root or cube root or no, instead of the square root, isn't there like cube roots and fourth root?
I'm not sure if they have that function. You can look it up to see that. But for the square root, it's really the square root usually you see. Yeah. Okay, so now basically you have to know this page here. Whenever you want to find a math API page, search for Java version 8, math, something like that. You'll get to this page. And you will see the class name over here, math. And then you'll see some description about the class, which you have to read if you want to use it. Okay?
Do we have to memorize the whole thing?
No, you don't have to. I would say, let's say for your assignments, I might tell you which classes you might have to look into. And you can certainly go online to see what's available there. Let's say in the test or in the quiz, if I do want to ask you any question about the math, I'll give you the information. But one thing you have to know how to read. For example, if I give you this summary here, you have to know, well, if I want to use the pi value here, I should know that if I want to store the value of pi, I should use a double variable to store that, because pi is of type double. Okay, and one more thing, And let's say, if you look at the method here, so now if I look at the ABS, the absolute value function, over here, I know that if I want to use this method here, I need to pass one input value in order to calculate the absolute value, right? And then it's going to return back to me another double. So this is really the output type, and this is the input type. And sometimes you might have more than one inputs. And let's say in the case of power, in this case, the power is going to take two inputs. Okay, if for example we have seen that already, 4 to the power of 2 or something like that. And then the output, you always have just one output. That's always the case. You have the output of type double. Okay, I will give you this all the information here, but you have to know how to read them in order to use it. Okay, you don't have to memorize that. Okay, good question. Any questions? If no, then I'm going to distribute the exercise for today. Okay.
Terus ini cube